schedule for what you can expect during this time. So we will have some offerings from Jeffrey, Hazel, and Luigi, which I'm sure you know, but I'll just read you through the sequence. So first, I'll just be welcoming you for this next minute here, and then we'll hand it over to Jeffrey, who will be sharing the sixth verse, the Ascension verse from Calendar of the Soul by Rudolf Steiner. Then we will go to the Secret Teachings, the Elementals, and the Etheric Christ, offering by Hazel, who will then hand it over to Luigi Morelli for his offerings on the Calendar of the Soul. And in that moment, he'll invite us into breakout conversations for 10 minutes. And then we will return for some closing thoughts. And depending on how it goes with time, folks could stay there to share some thoughts if conversation wants to happen. Hello from Louisiana. Okay, I wonder, Hazel, if you want to say anything else before we roll into the program. Thank you for organizing this. It's great to see everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, Frank. You've already helped us with a lot of tech things, and I shouldn't have had you play that song of Ultras, because now I'm crying and I can't see anything. Yeah, the power of sound vibration. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Really just creates the sacred space for us. And of course, the Calendar of the Soul is such a beautiful, mysterious thing to live into. And I'm so excited to have Luigi bring his wonderful research to bear for us today. And so let's start off with the mood that we're in right now, which is this ascension mood. And we'll hear Jeffrey speak with his beautiful sound vibration to bring us the sixth verse.
There has arisen out of my singularity, myself, and finds itself as world revelation in power's pulse of time and space. The world shows me everywhere as divine primal archetype, mine own image's truthfulness.
We find that truth within ourselves. So we've already done a lot of work. I feel we've already done a lot of work today. But I would ask you to do a little more. And let's create a collective intention to acknowledge that we are working to create a safe, sacred space here in this realm of subnature. And that we are consciously putting the adversarial forces to work for the highest good. And yes, let's thank them for doing their job to wake us up to our task of redeeming this cyberspace, transforming the web into an altar, a sacred space, as we stand in our social solidarity, right? To consecrate the ethers with our goodwill, to co-create a new communal Damascus experience, right? To serve our highest evolution. So if we could just breathe into that collectively, I trust that we're doing the work. We're doing the work. We're adding to this etheric energy that's happening right now. Ascension. Wow, it comes with all this beauty, all the blossoming in the world, right? This unfolding into fullness, the trees, the plants, the flowers, touched by the warmth and light from above, are stirring upwards, embodying heaven's blessings of color and fragrance. The whole of nature, you can feel it just reaching towards the heights. And the longing of the human soul strives also upward in unison with nature, seeking the touch of world warmth. So this mood of ascension attunes all of life to the cosmic expanses. And yeah, it's in this mood every year at the time of the ascension of Christ that nature celebrates the ascension of the soul of the earth. It's not by chance that the 40 days between Easter and Ascension coincide with this season of rebirth. Yes, so every year when the earth breathes out in the springtime, the mystery of the ascension of Christ, who is the spirit of the earth, is renewed. And if you're paying attention to the cosmic dance, see how the stars and their constellations are shifting into their spring and summer places, and the planets, the wandering stars, tread the measured course around them. So these dots of light in the distance point us to spiritual beings who direct the life of the universe. So from this point of view, Rudolf Steiner calls Ascension a festival of the hierarchies. Yeah, we got some allies, folks. And we can also remember that when the Christ descended down through the heavenly spheres from the heights of the Godhead, we work with that during the holy nights, right? Came condensed into a human form. The hierarchies lost his presence. They could only find him by looking into the depths, bearing witness to the God who entered physical existence to remind earthly humanity of its cosmic citizenship. And it really just blows my mind to think that at Ascension, the mystery of death and resurrection was brought to the company of heaven. Right? Those eternal beings who had no concept of death. So not only that Ascension, signals this return of the lost world of Earth, back into the community of the stars, but also this gift to the spiritual world. So since that time, the life of the planet is renewed with the cosmic forces that stream earthward, imbued now with this new impulse from Christ's deed. So this reconnection between heaven and earth, right? Because in the twilight of the gods, things got separated. There was a veil. But this reconnection happened. We see it in the prefiguring of the story of Jacob's ladder in the Old Testament. I love these prefigurings, these stories that we get they're going to lead us, right? So this dream of the stairway to heaven, Jacob gives us the prophecy of the ascension in a picture of a golden ladder on which the choirs of angels and our descendants and our beloved dead traverse between heaven and earth, right? That rainbow bridge, you can picture it. So when the risen Christ returned to, quote, sit at the right hand of the Father at the ascension, he fulfilled Jacob's prophecy, becoming the living bridge between the above and below. And every year we get to tune into this harmonizing spring dialogue between the worlds. And as the Christ ascended, so too in the fullness of time will humanity be transfigured. The company of the hierarchies wait for us, their younger siblings, to ascend. But first, we have to do that in our thinking, right? With our will forces. We have to meet them through our thinking, feeling, and willing. That's how we meet them in fellowship, because they already are wanting to work at our sides, but they wait for us to rise in our thinking to meet them, hoping, to awaken us to the new Christ revelation coming in the clouds. Right? We talked about clouds a little bit before we started, right? The time is now. The fulfillment of the secret promise of the ascension is the second coming. It was said to the apostles, he will come again in like manner as you have seen him go up into the clouds of heaven. So yes, the ascension is the seed of this second coming. And the second coming is the fulfillment of the ascension. Yeah. We have to live into it. We have to visualize it. We have to use our imagination, right? And do that work. And then comes the inspiration, and then comes the intuition. So here also, when we start to get a glimpse into this ethereal realm, we can experience a revealing of the elemental worlds as well. So in this way, Ascension can be called not only the festival of the hierarchies, but also the festival of the elements. Right? We got this as above, so below theme going on here, folks, right? The flowers, the fruits are in reality not just products of earth, but heavenly forms filled with earthly substance, just like us. And so for 40 days after the resurrection, amidst all this amazing seasonal activity, the disciples received from the risen Christ his most esoteric teachings, essentially the contents of the fifth gospel given to us by Rudolf Steiner. A little shout out to our fifth gospel study group out there. Little plug for our book. So powerful. And then after receiving all of that, all of those secret teachings, then they witnessed the Christ being received into the clouds, rising up out of their sight. Like it's an expansion of his being, like the unfolding of a flower into the universe. And the mystery is that in the festival of Ascension, not only do the forces of the cosmos come into Earth existence, but it also opens us to the forces proceeding from the sphere of the Father. Right? That bridge, right? Because of the Ascension, we can tap into the Godhead, folks. Wow. The Christ is now the bridge connecting us to the Father. And as a result of the conversations over the 40 days with the risen Christ, the disciples were able to receive a primal source for a new imaginative clairvoyance, something that we're still working on today. And for them, it removed the veil hiding the true image of death, which is in reality a facet of the Father God in the aspect of creator. Right? Because what is born, what is created, what is born must die. But through Christ, death becomes life. This revelation brings the true content of death with its connection to the kingdom of the Divine Father into perspective. So at the moment of the ascension, the true meaning of death was made manifest to the disciples. They beheld it with their own eyes to be a process of union with the world of the divine. Right? We know this idea that when we die in the physical world, we are born into the spiritual world. So this became clear for them. And then during those confusing, lonely 10 days between Ascension and Pentecost, the circle of disciples stayed together, pondering all this, bonding further in their confusion at seemingly losing the presence of Christ for the second time. So this intensity created a new community, not of blood, but of faith. A new wineskin, a chalice, a vessel for the Holy Spirit to enter, flashing in like true winds of change through this open portal to pour into them the true understanding of the mystery of Golgotha and the Ascension in full wisdom. So since that time, Easter, Ascension, and Whitsun have remained inseparable from one another. They form the foundation of the only movable feasts in the cycle of the year. So in this way, the inner substance of this great threefold festival can illuminate the turning point of time for all humanity. So those are a few little thoughts there that I hope will open the way for all that our dear keynote speaker Luigi Morelli will bring us. Where I know that working with the calendar of the soul can take us even deeper. So thank you, friends, for listening. And now, Luigi Morelli. You know how I love to say your name like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yes, I'm going to touch on a lot of things that you've said from a different perspective, completely complementary. And I want to thank you for allowing me to share about something I deeply appreciate and something I've worked with for the last 10 years. And I find it a bit ironic that I'll be touching on the 6th verse, which puzzled me for quite some time. It was one of the verses that puzzled me the most. So now, if seen in a larger context, it started making more and more sense. And it's really, going through the season of rebirth is going to be a theme that is going to match what you said, Hazel. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to the calendar. I'm going to talk about the verses of cross 7, or the qualities of the cross 7. And if you don't know what the cross is, I'll get to it. And then I'm going to talk about the ethers, or the cosmic spheres. In the calendar, they don't appear as ethers, but cosmic spheres of cosmic life, light, and warmth. So, and then we're going to read the verses. Geoff is going to read the verses 1 to 7, and I'm going to give a comment for each one of them. So first of all, the calendar of the soul, what is unique about it? It's a collection of 52 verses, one for each week of the year. And what is unique about it is that Steiner wanted us to mark the beginning of the year at Easter, not at Christmas, New Year with the birth of Jesus, but at Easter with the resurrection. And the calendar kind of weaves the activity of nature and the hierarchies behind it with the movements of the soul. So it weaves the path outward with the path inward. The path outward with the senses to the macrocosm, and the path of the soul that strives to understand its own destiny, its own karma. So the two movements are subtly subsumed in the calendar. And I'll share the screen now because I need to get to, okay. So the calendar can be represented either with a circle, and here I'm bringing this from Carl Koenig, and you can see the axis of the equinoxes horizontally and the solstices vertically, Easter and Michaelmas horizontally, St. John and Christmas vertically. But more often it's presented as a lemniscate. And why? Because the lemniscate gives us this dynamic element that the circle cannot give us. So for example, if you put your finger on the inside of the lower side of the lemniscate and trace the contour, you find that as you cross the intersection of the axis, your finger comes outward. So this movement in and out is something that the lemniscate portrays better than the circle. And it portrays also this polarity between the two parts of the year, the spring and summer above, fall and winter below. So just an important part of the calendar is that each verse has a complementary along the axes that intersect in the center of the lemniscate. So the verse of Easter has a complementary in the Holy Week, verse 1 and verse 52. The verse of Michaelmas, of verse 26, has a complementary on verse 27. And now if you take the four together, you see they're the closest ones to the center, and that's what is called cross one or quartet one. And then if you go out from the center towards the apices of the solstices, then you have cross 2, 3, 4, up to 13. Each of them including 4 verses. Now the verses divide the year in uneven parts. 3 following verses add up to an interval of 26 weeks or verses. I'll give you an example. So if you go from verse 52 to 1, there's an interval of 1. If you go from verse 1 to 26, and there's an interval of 25. 1 and 25 is 26. So this divides the year in very unequal parts. Take another example, take 4. You have 4, 23, 30, and 49. I hope you can see them well in the circles there, in the largest circle traced inwardly. Well, then you see that the quartet divides the year in intervals of 7 and 19, quite asymmetrical. Go to cross 7, and you have verses 7, 20, 33, and 46. Now, I'm sure that there is somebody mathematically inclined in the group that has discovered that that is unique. Because yes, this is the quartet that divides the year in 4 equal parts, in 4 intervals of 13. But that's not the only thing that is unique about this quartet. It's also the fact that the verses are called warning or threshold verses. They mark a transition. They announce a danger and or a universal need, opportunity, and they indicate a change of direction. And they're a call to the soul to acquire a new faculty. So this is the new faculty that would last for the quadrant. So for example, if a new faculty is called 4 and 7, that's the faculty that is needed from 7 to 20. In fact, the cross 7 divides the calendar in 4 quadrants that are centered around the cardinal festivals of the year. So from 46 to 7, you are in the east quadrant. From 7 to 20, in the St. John quadrant, from 20 to 33 in the Michaelmas quadrant, and from 33 to 46 in the Christmas quadrant. By this I mean that the festival comes in the middle, in the 7th verse of the 13. So this will be a key of interpretation, if we want. And there's a second one. There's a second one that is present in the calendar, and which is the one of the, here I'll show you again. You can see that the year is divided equally on cross 7, whereas it's not in the crosses 1 or 13. And now I want to go through the rhythm of the year, which is important in the calendar. And it can be envisioned as the movement of the ethers. So the ethers are like envelopes around the earth, interpenetrating envelopes. Coming from the closest inwardly, we have the life ether, which corresponds to the element of earth. Moving outward, you have the chemical or tone ether that corresponds to the element of water. And then as you move towards the atmosphere, you have the light ether corresponding to the element of air. And then further out, the warmth ether corresponding to the element of fire. Now, if you are familiar with the calendar, you know you haven't found these ethers, but you have found something else. You have found cosmic life, cosmic light, and cosmic warmth. So how do they correspond? They correspond in the fact that cosmic life brings together the chemical and life ethers. And why? Those are the ethers that from which the human being has sort of estranged himself at the time of the fall. When we ate from the tree of knowledge, we divorced ourselves from the tree of life. And this realm of cosmic life is the realm that the Christ brings close to us at this time of the year. So the calendar also talks about cosmic light, which corresponds to the light ether and the activity of the hierarchies behind it, and cosmic warmth, which corresponds to the warmth ether and the activities of the hierarchies. So I want to talk about the movements that we see that are contrasted in the lemniscate between the top part of the lemniscate and the bottom part of the lemniscate. And here they come from the work of Vaxmuth. You see spring on top, fall on the bottom. So in spring and summer, there is an exhaling of the earth into the cosmos, which corresponds to an extension of the chemical ether into the light ether. And we know we can see something of it, an external manifestation, when we look at the dew. It's a clear manifestation of this ether expansion, chemical tone ether into the light ether. So the time of spring and summer is a time of nature consciousness. We are giving ourselves to the cosmos. We tend to fall into a dream, but we must remain conscious. It's the time that Steiner called the time of nature consciousness. It's the time from which we receive from the cosmos the strength to renew ourselves, to renew the self. In the fall and the winter, we have an inbreathing, a contraction of the chemical ether into the life ether, and the earth becomes more self-contained. And the human being goes into the time of self-consciousness. So the world seems to go asleep, but the human being has to remain awake. Awake to himself, herself, awake to the needs of the world. So now we will follow the two themes. the evolution of the soul faculties that are called for in Cross 7, in the 4 verses of Cross 7. And here we have them in the translation of Geoff, who is on the call. And so we followed that theme and the theme of cosmic life, cosmic light, and cosmic warmth. And I'll give more importance to the time that goes from 46 to 20, because that's the time that we're looking at this time of the year. But I also mentioned what happens in the fall and winter. So in verse 46, we read, "Rise, memory, in all your radiance, from spirit depths, strengthening my beholding." So the external power of the life and of the senses is rising, but we carry with us the ripened fruits of thinking from the winter. But now this threshold verse tells us that something else needs to come to our help, which is the power of memory, from spirit depths, to strengthen my beholding, and makes a call to the forces of the will. So it's the forces of the will, but directed inwardly, as we look at the contrast in the fall. Then we come to the Easter quadrant, soon after 46. And soon after verse 46, we see the ascent of cosmic life. If we went verse by verse, I could mention it, but I don't have the time to go there. Then after Easter and for 3 weeks, roughly, it's still cosmic life rising. Then from verses 4 to 8, we hear more and more about cosmic life and cosmic light. And that's the time of the ascension that we're looking at. And then from verses 8 and beyond, we hear about cosmic light and cosmic warmth. And then from roughly verse 10, in an implicit way, we start hearing about cosmic word, and then it becomes more and more explicit. So there's a turning point, which is important for us because it comes just after Ascension, which is the verse threshold of Cross 7, the verse 7. And it reads, "May my power of boding rise." And it says that it will replace my might of thinking. So what is that power called boding? I imagine most of you haven't used the word over the last year or even before. So it's the verse that Koenig liked and used. I prefer to use the verse intuition, but what is important when you use the word is to characterize it. So intuition really is that inner compass of the soul to navigate this journey in which the senses pull us away from ourselves, in a time in which our thinking doesn't have the clarity that it would have in the fall and in the winter. So I'll characterize briefly what intuition is. So it's that inner dialogue of the soul that establishes sort of goals and boundaries. It fathoms, it recognizes what is happening in the macrocosm that the verses talk about. And it recognizes what the soul is called for to offer in response. So it's really about, can I recognize what is happening out there? Can I fathom what I need to bring in as a response inwardly? And this is the leitmotif that goes from the verses 7 to 20. And I'll give you some examples of what the soul asks for. In verse 8, it says, human thinking must lay in quiet dream life. In verse 9, lose yourself in light to find yourself. In verse 12, take wing from yourself. And there's more of those, naturally. And then some example of what comes from without, from the macrocosm. In verse 10, we're told that a cosmic being has approached us. In verse 11, we're asked to understand the words of wisdom of the verse 11. In verse 14, we're told that cosmic thinking is drawing nearer. In verse 15, as the last example, that enchanted weaving has enwrapped myself. So boating is this activity that weaves between. And there's a very unique quality to the verses that go from 7 to 20. And then we enter summer after the verses 13, 14, which is still in the quadrant. And then cosmic life, cosmic light, and warmth are treasured within. We are called to assimilate them. We are really like a chrysalis that is letting these powers act on itself before it can come out. And what will come out is what the calendar calls self-power. The newly reborn self that has been fertilized by the forces of the cosmos. And in verse 20, which is the end of this midsummer quadrant, St. John quadrant, I express that I feel my being re-enlivened, and then I need a connection with the world. Now, how is that realized? It's through self-engendered will. It's as if the verse were to say, come forth, self-engendered will. So it's a gesture of the will turns toward the world, and it's a gesture of the will wanting to have this self emerge in consciousness. So I find that the self-engendered will expresses what that is. You can also call it the Michaelic self-engendered will, because this is the time of Michael. In the fall and winter, you have a metamorphosis of the spheres, the cosmic spheres. Cosmic life, as I just said, becomes self-engendered will. This strong exertion of the will to let the selfhood mature and to turn towards the world. The cosmic light becomes the light of thinking. The cosmic warmth turns into heart warmth and loving. I'll give you some examples of the expressions in the calendar. When the cosmic life is internalized, you hear it in expressions like germinating force of soul, cosmic spirit fount of strength, forceful will of life, and many more. I'll just make a little pause here. The transition to cosmic light comes more clearly. It starts before 33, but it comes clearly at 33, when the world is calling on us. It's calling on our soul's participation. It's calling on the capacity of the human being to be co-creative. And co-creating doesn't mean to be frantically active in the world. It means to start changing ourselves inwardly. And the most clear example of it is when our thinking rises from everyday thinking to imagination. Because in imagination, we are no longer separated. In imagination, we are part of the imagination, as much as the microcosm is part of it. So it's the first part. We member ourselves into the spiritual world. We diminish this separation, and therefore we can become active in the spiritual world. And this metamorphosis is expressed in the calendar of the soul, when cosmic light becomes, and I'm taking some expressions from some verses, the light of soul, sunlight of my soul, sun's glowing, summer of the soul. And a lot of these expressions are expressly referred to thinking. So thinking is what allows us to become free human beings, and it's only the free human being who can express love. So the cosmic warmth reemerges as warmth of heart and capacity to love. And again, it appears in a variety of expression towards the later part of the winter. And I'll quote some. Love worlds of the heart, kindle and inflame, human loving, glowing warmth, and inner fire. And so what is interesting at this point is that the human being who can become a co-creator and turn in love towards fellow human beings, and can also turn in love towards the hierarchies. And the hierarchies that turn in love towards all human beings now can recognize that, look, down there on earth, there is somebody. Somebody has awakened. There is somebody we can work with. And it's as if a light went out and excitement came out, were expressed by them, by the hierarchies, because here now they can work with human beings. And I'm finished with this part, and I'll hand it over to Geoff to read us the verses, and then I'll have short comments on each verse. You want to read the verse one, Geoff?
Yeah, just unmuting. When out of wits of worlds the sun communes with human sense, and joy from the depths of soul unites with the light in vision, then from out of selfhood's sheath thoughts ray out into distances of space, and dimly bind the human essence to the spirit's being.
So in verse 52 of the Holy Week that just precedes, the human being has turned to the macrocosm, and now the Son of Christ speaks to us. Christ that is never mentioned in the calendar. And nature and the spiritual world turn to the human being. In 52, we have recognized the beauty of the world, and now it becomes joy from the depths of soul. I have to drink some water.
Luigi, who are the artists of these pieces here?
Thank you for bringing that forward. So on the left is Anne Stockton, and on the right is Carl Koenig. Anne Stockton has a very beautiful artistic quality. So has Carl Koenig, who is not an artist, but Carl Koenig has also a much more intuitive quality.
And Jeffrey, are these your translations? I just want to be clear.
I'm not sure. I mean, you put them on here, so I thought...
It should be. They are.
They are mine. Well, then they're mine.
That was my intention anyway. So. Yes, so I was saying the beauty of the world becomes, in the human being becomes joy from the depths of soul. And we are told that the thoughts soar to distances of space. What that means is that thoughts reach to the periphery, to the cosmic formative forces. And it's a sort of recognition of the same nature of thinking in the human being and the cosmic formative forces in the macrocosm. So thinking that we have striven to acquire and over the winter unites us with the spirit's life, with the cosmic life. And the disciples at the resurrection experienced that rebirth. It was not just the presence of the Christ, it was the Christ bringing with him the realm of cosmic life. And in the next verse, we're going to pay attention to how thinking evolves and how feeling evolves. And I'll move to the next verse.
Into the outermost fields of sense, thinking's force loses its own existence. The spirit world finds anew their offspring, humankind, whose seed resides in them, and yet whose fruits of soul must in their self be found.
So here there are two important things that are mentioned. So thinking loses its strength under the pull of the ethers, cosmic life, and under the pull of the senses. But we cannot lose ourselves with it, with the senses. Our seeds germinate in the spirit world, but we must find the fruits of soul within the self. But so thinking recedes, but in a sense we are getting fertilized, enlivened by the universal thoughts. And we need to acquire new powers. And one of them has already been mentioned in verse 46, which was the power of memory. And Hazel mentioned that the disciples, after Christ's resurrection, lived in a sphere of enlivened memory. By that I mean that everything that has experienced before the resurrection acquired new meaning through their enlivened memory. And in the next verse, we'll see what memory awakens and what impulses rise in the eye.
The waxing human eye, itself forgetting and mindful of its own primal state, speaks to the universe. In you, freed from my subjective fetters, I ground my real being.
So in the memory that is awakened in the sphere of cosmic life, we reconnect with our the memories of paradise before the fall. So Christ, it's as if Christ brings us back to the knowledge of our essential nature, from which we have divorced ourselves at the time of the fall. And this, for me, is what that means, being mindful of our primal state. And that was a state where memory was close to identification and therefore self-forgetfulness. In Eden, we were not self-aware. So now the ego needs to give itself to what comes from the cosmos and consciously sacrifice the lower I to let the higher grow in us, but without losing ourselves in ecstasy, as in the times before Christ. So this expansion and sense of union merging continues in verse 4.
I feel the being of my being. Thus speaks sentience, which in the sunlit world with floods of light unites itself. It would to thinking's clarity bestow the gift of warmth, and firmly weld humanity in unity with the world.
So we expand, and this is a rough way of saying it, from cosmic life into cosmic light, because all these ethers interpenetrate each other. They're not separate realms. And through the agency of sentience, a word that is hard to apprehend in our common language, others have used perceptive feeling. So use the one that comes closer to your understanding. And we acquire a rooting in the element of cosmic life, and we merge into the light. So we are announcing here, the verse is announcing the goal of the spring and summer and further, which is for the light of thinking to receive the warmth of feeling, for thinking to attain its full potential. And in the next verse, we continue this movement of expansion into the cosmic light. In fact, cross 5 they're all called light verses, the verses that belong to cross 5.
In light, which out of spirit depths weaves fruitfully through space, is God's creative might revealed. In him appears the soul's being, expanded into universal being, and resurrected from narrow selfhood's inner might.
In this verse, we see the wonderful intermingling of life and light, which is in front of our eyes at this time of the year, because we know the lower ethers encompass the higher ones. So life encompasses light, light encompasses warmth. So in the sphere of cosmic life and cosmic light, we have a resurrection of the human being into the truest, fuller being that we have estranged ourselves from at the time of the fall. This is made possible and made conscious by union with the Christ. But that means we have to achieve it. What happens naturally in nature, we have to make it out of our own effort with this connection to the Christ. And so by so doing, we escape narrow selfhood's inner might. And what was announced in verse 2 comes to closer to a climax in 5, this movement that is called as a resurrection. We are aspiring to meet our higher self and receive the inspiration of it, even if in this time of the year it cannot be complete, because we cannot really apprehend it fully and consciously. So the next verse, which is the verse of Ascension, announces the climax and the fruit of resurrection that is announced in verse 5.
There has arisen out of my singularity myself, and finds itself as world revelation in power's pulse of time and space. The world shows me everywhere as divine primal archetype, mine own image's truthfulness.
So this desire to free ourselves from the fetters of selfhood brings us an intimation of our higher self and the vastness of it. And we come to realize that we are conceived in the image of the divine. And it's as if we were spread out over the whole of nature and the universe. And as Hazel mentioned, we enter in a feeling way into the sphere of the etheric Christ. And the higher self in Christ reveals itself in power's pulse of time and space. This is a signature of the Christ, for example, in the foundation stone meditation. So we can start to lose ourselves in the pool of the ethers and under the sway of the senses. And in fact, there is a danger here, which echoes a little bit, but in a very different way, what happened at the time of Christ. At the time of the Ascensions, the disciples knew, because Christ had told them that he would ascend to the Father, but they interpreted that as a loss. They did not understand that the Christ permeated the whole earth aura, that he was actually had remained close. They had to wait until Pentecost to get out of the grief. For us, it's a bit different. You saw from verses 1 to 5 to 6, actually, this continuous movement of expansion. Well, you can only expand so much, and without losing yourself. And in fact, that's what happens. We're going to close with verse 7.
Myself now threatens to escape, mightily attracted by the cosmic light. Now may my powers of boding rise and assume their rightful realm in strength. Replace my might of thinking now, which in the senses show is like to lose itself.
So there's a wonderful dialogue between boding, intuition, and thinking. It's like they pass the torch to each other. And that's a little bit the dialogue of the two parts of the year. So in this part of the year, we're told that thinking loses its clarity. It cannot direct us inwardly, but we have this complementation of memory, the will directed inwardly, with this capacity of intuition, boding, the faculty of soul. And really what it will do and what we have to do from verse 7 to 20 is really start entering a subtle dialogue with the macrocosm by sensing and responding, sensing what comes to us from the cosmos and from the hierarchies and what we're called to develop in the soul. And I'll let you finish with the verse 8 of Pentecost. I guess we could read it and then close.
The might of the senses grow in union with the gods creating. It thrusts the force of thinking to the dimness of a dream. When godlike being wills to unite with my own soul, must human thinking humbly yield to dream existence.
Move through so many spaces and have all this picture of the year in its different shapes. So now I'm just going to prepare some breakout rooms. There'll be about 3 people in each room.
So we'll put you on the spot there, Jeffrey. I'm
That's
glad you're
fine.
enlivened.
No problems. I mean, obviously, we're going to be all together in our own rooms by ourselves together with a screen, because we can't actually speak together with all these number of people. It'll just become a disaster. So I would like you to just, I'm going to read you a short verse by Novalis first, because it connects to the verse that we're going to work on. So of course this is not in the original, this is in English. It's not a bad translation. In heavy clouds let him ascend, and so also let him downward tread. In cooling streams let him be sent, in flames of fire blaze his descent, in air and essence, sound and dew, to permeate our whole earth through. Okay, and in a certain sense, this is also somewhere the topic that we discussed in our breakout room, this necessity of the ascension in order to descend and embrace the whole world in his loving grasp, as it were, permeating every aspect of the entire globe, not just a central part in Israel where it originally happened. So the poem that I'd like us to look at and work with a little bit, it's very short. It's by Emily Dickenson, and it's very alive. So I would like to approach this poem from the parts to the whole. So I encourage you then to speak, as I will speak a word, and then for you to speak that for yourself and to try and bring that alive for yourself, what that word does, not what it means necessarily, how the sounding and the meaning create an experience. That's what we are after, that the word is an experience and not an abstraction. So we're going to take one word at a time. And the first word that we're going to take is dew. Okay, so for yourself, speak dew a few times for yourself. Try and get the feeling of what dew is. The feeling of how it descends from heaven. What descends in the dew? Dew. It's fantastic, the sound, de. You got this descending de. dew. And there's a kind of a rising up in the EU aspect of it. Dew. But it has a substantial feeling. Okay, so remember that feeling. Morning. And not mourning, as the disciples did, but morning. And for yourself, morning. Feel a little gesture that might go with that word. Yeah, you've got evening, descending, and morning, arising. The sunrise, you can feel the sunrise creating morning. You can feel the light changing as the sun comes close to rising. And that's there in that word, morning. Okay, so now we've got two words and we're going to put them together. So we're going to do morning dew and morning dew. So we see dew is descending, morning is rising. There's a kind of a counter stream at work there in the morning dew. And where's the dew found? In the grasses, in the buds. Yeah. Another word. Stooping. Stooping. Again, listen to the sound. Est. Ooh. And then the ping, penetrating. Stooping. Another lovely word. Plucking. 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 Imagine yourself picking a flower. Plucking a flower. Plucking. Okay, one more word. Smiling. 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 It's an interesting word because you can have all sorts of little connotations with that smiling, but this must be a pure expansion that takes place with a smile, a sun smile, smiling, and then flying, flying, flying. Yeah, you see, if you're a bird and you suddenly take off, fly. Or as we might want to be able to feel free in flight. It's a beautiful word, actually. So now we're going to go from one to the other, to the other, to the other. So we're going to go from stooping, plucking, smiling, flying. So feel the process of these four activities. One more time. And stooping, plucking, smiling, flying. Good. I'm going to do it in reverse. We're going to go flying, smiling, plucking, stooping. So feel the process of expansion and then reverse contraction. We do it one more time, both ways. So now try not to do one word, another word, another word, and another word, but try and go from this word into that word, into that word, into that word, so that we feel a smoothness of transition. So here we go. And stooping, plucking, smiling, flying, flying, smiling, plucking, stooping. Brilliant. Good. I wish I could hear you all, but I'm sure it's brilliant. Have another word. Buds. And again, buds. Buds. Feel how this b comes into form into the dz, which then maybe goes down into the plant, which bears the bud, which is then the metamorphosis of the leaf into the flower when the bud opens. Buds. Buds. Make a bud. Buds. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so now another word, angel. And angel. Feel the L in angel. It kind of goes into a moment of consciousness in the A and then opens out its wings in the Jill. Angel. And it doesn't have substantiality. It doesn't have physicality. Angel. Buds. So contrast the two. And angel. Buds. Reverse. Buds. Angel. There's one word that we don't have here. So if we do buds, flower, angel, then we've got a process that takes us from the seed-like into the beauty of the angelic, which the flower, in a certain sense, does for us. Angel, buds, buds, angel. Good. So now we're going to speak just the first line of the 4-line verse. So we've got angels in the early morning. Remember we said about the sunrise in the morning, what it does. So angels in the early morning. Good. Feel the angels in the light, or feel the angels in the what is it? It's the water in the light that reflects, that gives us a rainbow equality. That really is where the angel live, in the watery element, descending, blessing. Angels in the early morning. And angels in the early morning. May be seen the dews among. May be seen the dews among. So feel how the angels descend as the sun is rising, and they are seen almost as the beings behind the dew. Angels in the early morning are seen the dews among. Repeat that line one more time, those two lines. And angels in the early morning are seen the dews among. Wonderful. This word among is such a beautiful word. This meeting, this quality. And what are they doing? We know what they did. They are stooping, they are plucking, they are smiling, and they are flying. Stooping, plucking, smiling, flying. That's our 3rd line crescendo verse. In crescendo line, in any 4-line verse, line 3 takes on a special quality, line 4 completes it. Line 1 introduces it, line 2 takes it on, line 3 is where the major activity is taking place, and line 4 completes the verse. It's in every 4-line verse, but actually even in a 5-line verse, line 3 does it. In a 6-line verse, you've got 3 and 6, etc. So the last line here is a question Dickenson asks. Do the buds to them belong? And ask the question, do the buds to them belong? Are the buds angels? Are the angels buds? Are the angels the carers of the buds, the nurturer of the buds, who then become flowers or return to angels? One more time that line. Do the buds to them belong? Ending with a question is so wonderful because the answer will come as an intuition if you really mean the question, which I think she did. So we've now got the whole verse, and I think we'll speak the verse twice together, separately, and then I think we must wrap it up. Okay, so we've got angels in the early morning may be seen the dews among, stooping, plucking, smiling, flying. Do the buds to them belong? One more time and then we'll round it off. Here we go. And angels in the early morning may be seen the dews among, stooping, plucking, smiling, flying. Do the buds to them belong? Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just wanted to share with all of you a beautiful experience here today for the Ascension Day. So I'm in Manitoba, Canada, and so I've been having warm and sunny days, and mostly the sky has been really bright and open. And since this morning earlier, when I was in Zoom call with some friends who are on here as well, I realized that's Ascension Day, because I used to celebrate that in Europe more, or I had more awareness on that than I have it here, because it's not really taken care of when you're not in these kind of circles. And so the whole day, the clouds were majestic. So it's been like, right now, even I could, I don't know, I can show you my computer around. It's like light up there, and then there's a big cloud cover, and it was almost a little thunder in between. So you can really feel like how the rising up of that, what you've been describing, is happening. So it's actually beautiful. Yeah, I just thought I share this nature observation. I'm here in the middle of nature, so it's quite practical. So yeah, thank you for making this happen, and yeah, thank you for the speech too. So
Will you do a biodynamic prep spray or anything during this time?
Actually, I did yesterday, last night. Not even being aware that it's Ascension, but it felt like, no, I actually did it with my parent and children group on Tuesday, just for them to experience it, and then I did another one last night, because it's better to do it in the evening, and it was, yeah, I wasn't even aware that it was Ascension. So I think that was kind of the 501 I did, the one for the soil, right? Not yet the 500, also the one from the horn mist, right?
Yeah, that's 500. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, no, so you're right in tune. Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I'm going to first move the chat away from Monica's face. Okay. How do I do that? Okay. Okay, here we are. So in the breakout room, I had to admit that I'm very unfamiliar with this whole topic, but a question was raised and we discussed it a little bit in the breakout room. So I was wondering, like, what actually happened between between the resurrection and ascension. So now I understand I need to read the fifth gospel. So we have a new reader of the fifth gospel and a new curious person. So thank you for today. I have a feeling that I'm going to really use this information, such as it is. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, all those secret teachings, they're available to us now, aren't they? They're
But first we
hanging
have
out.
to have a question.
Yeah, but you ask the right question, you get the answer. They're hanging out in those ethers that the different ethers that Luigi gave us today. Just waiting for you to pull them in. Maybe two more thoughts before we close. Katie?
Yeah, I've lived with the calendar of the soul for many years, and I live with it with Foundation Stone, and I was gratified to hear Luigi make reference to that. There is an interrelationship between these. It's amazing. It's amazing to experience those relationships yearly being ever new. But we ended without comment on the 8th verse, which is the most perplexing verse for me. And no comment was made on it. And I was hoping for something to help me go forward with it. Didn't happen, but it ends with the might of senses grows. Yeah, I can do that. When godly being will with my soul unite, must human thinking to dream existence humbly yield. And I feel myself helpless at that point. And I'm wondering if that is appropriate. And just let it hang until you understand or get somewhere. Or just, yeah.
There is a line that
Yeah.
I always used to get because I played Capesius in the mystery drums for many years, that Benedictus always used to say to me, and that is, lose yourself to find yourself. Lose yourself to find yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I can relate to somehow this giving up of that which you hold on to as being who you think you are, but to really find who you really are, as it were. So in a certain sense, that is also the jest that does take place in summer, that you actually expand out, and it's very hard to have the kind of clarity of thinking that you can achieve in winter when you are closer to yourself, as it were, yourself. But now you can maybe find a way of experiencing yourself in the clouds, as it were, which is actually your eternal self. The St. John's experience, perhaps. I don't know. This is just my ramblings on about how
That's wonderful,
I
Geoff.
understand these words.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
for me, Katie, the way I think of it is that you have to empty the vessel. You have to empty that so that the Holy Spirit can pour in. Right? It's this sort of releasing,
yeah.
and letting yourself be empty. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And those thoughts are very much with me these days. So this is very appropriate. Thank you. Yep, thank you.
It's interesting. Somebody was asking about the feast days and such from Steiner's original calendar of the soul. And today is actually the 104th anniversary of the apparition of Our Lady of Fatima. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. So we have these I kind of was thinking about this today, the connection between Ascension and the Transfiguration. And then these apparitions, these visions of the Blessed Virgin Mary in the etheric realm. And these have been happening since, right when the consciousness soul age was coming in, back in the 1300s even. So an interesting, to me, something to think about, that there are these signals happening on many, many levels for us to pay attention to these realms. And it's also the anniversary, May 13th, it was a Friday, the 13th in 1314, when the last, when the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake. So Steiner actually speaks specifically about that they became, like these offerings, that they were inscribed into the ethers. The actions and the things that they did in the world became this beautiful sacrifice that's still living within the etheric realm. So we can also tune into that. Steiner specifically says that when we bring that into our imaginative thinking, that we can actually, it will help us unlock these mysteries around Golgotha and Christ's steed at that time. So yeah, a lot of these little clues all over the place. And, of course, we have this calendar of the soul. We have the wheel of the year so that we can be in this cosmic and earthly flow. And we have these milestones, these feast days to remind us, but like Monica was saying, she did her work last night, the Eve, because she was in the flow and she knew what her property needed. She knew what the children needed. And so we can trust ourselves when we do work with these things, as Luigi has and as Katie has. They start to live in us in a way that brings us into this place of inspiration and intuition, where we're co-creating with these flows and these spiritual beings. So unless there's anybody that really has something else to say, I wanted to maybe try to bring us to our present turning point in time. Does anybody have anything they want to say before I give us our last thoughts for the night? So yeah, I just was, I'm always trying to think about, the past, present, future. I'm really trying to unveil the Isis of our time, because I think it is important to work with the Foundation Stone meditation, to work with these amazing resources that we have, to see all of these connections. So I live in this world with all of you, and here we are, these little squares in this cyberspace, because of our world situation, right? This global pandemic, right, which is entreating us to strive, among other things, to practice spirit beholding, right? To go out and look at those clouds, to see it, to pluck and to stoop and to be involved, to really behold with our higher senses, to awaken to this etheric realm that we all share in common. And we can practice spirit recalling. So that's the parallel, right? That's the past. To remember that we received our etheric body on old sun, right? So there's this connection with the sun, right? And that our current world crisis is all about this idea of this corona, right? I always think of that around the sun. And so how can we really think about and re-enliven our own primal formative forces that we received at that time? Because we are supposed to be the ones to bring in the new sun, right? So isn't this part of our work too? To remember that we received this gift in the past, and now we have to make it like a seed that was given to us again, through the mystery of Golgotha, through the blood of Christ, that we can, enliven that through our own formative forces. And then right smack dab in the middle between the future and the past is this spirit sensing, right? That we can, really call this corona, as an opportunity to reconnect with each other on every realm, in every parts of our bodies, from the physical, the etheric, the astral, our I forces, right? To reconnect to the sun forces that are now imbued with this etheric Christ, waiting to be recognized and engaged with in these current evolving conditions. So really, I see it as an invitation for all of humanity to rise to a higher stage of thinking, feeling, and willing. And yes, tuning into the calendar of the soul is a valuable tool for our continued initiation. Right? We get these 52 verses, and we get to turn and spin and dance and pluck and smile while we're living into this wheel of the year. So thank you everyone for making this a milestone, coming here tonight and being part of this community. And yeah, let's hold each other and try to work with these mysteries during these 10 days, and make ourselves a chalice for this impulse of this blessing of baptism by fire. We're already in the baptism by fire, aren't we? So let's claim it, and let's really make it a beautiful and productive thing. So I want to thank Frank so much for being our Zoom guru and getting all the gremlins in the cyberspace to cooperate with us. And Jeffrey, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. What is it, 3:00 there? Okay.
Yeah, now I'm wide awake. So.
And dear Luigi, a scholar and a gentleman, thank you so much for bringing these. It's like a blueprint, and yeah, it's going to take some work for us to live into that lemniscate, but you have given us a key now and a way in. So thank you so much, and I hope we can work together again soon.
Thanks for bringing us together, Hazel.
Thank
Love
you
to
all,
share with you.
friends. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good
Night, everyone.
Good night.
night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
Morning.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Peace.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Geoff. Thanks, Luigi.
Cheers, Frank.
Arlene.
It was wonderful.
Yep.
Dew.
Yeah, the dew, the morning
I
dew.
was like, am I going to speak in a British accent or am I going to speak in like,
Well, how do you say dew? How do
I
you
was
say dew?
dew?
Dew.
It's not as
Dew.
colorful. It's
Dew.
not
Yeah.
lighter.
Dew.
I thought you mean the word dew. I saw
Dew.
that. What is he talking about? Dew or do?
Oh, no.
I thought you say dew, of course.
I mean, I need English speech formation anyway.
Yeah,
That would
your
help my
language,
accent a little bit.
It's much more, much more connected with the garden, the way your language. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, beautiful. Hi, Anne.
Hi, Hazel.
How are you, dear?
Hazel. I'm great. This is so beautiful.
Thank you for being here.
Well, to be here with you all, with
We've-
you.
We've turned on some more people to the gospel, the fifth gospel. So
Yes.
that's exciting.
Exciting.
Yeah, it's just that book of all books. It's really a basic one and takes us deep and wide. So yeah,
It is my favorite so far.
They're all my favorites.
I know. And I want to say a special hello to Roy Sadler. You know, he actually gives us the calendar of the soul. He makes his own translations that we use on the reverse ritual, and he gives them to me every Sunday morning. So his special insights, and he puts his little titles on them and such. And so thank you, Roy, for living into it the way you do as well.
Amazing, amazing.
I was also just thinking, Catherine, your question, it was interesting that Jeffrey answered it because he's already in the dream state, 2 to 3 a.m. So I thought that was interesting, right? Because it was about the dream, yeah. So many nice, beautiful synchronicities.
It was amazing this whole evening. Well, anyhow, this morning's meditation, I hadn't consciously entered into Ascension, but by golly, my morning meditation did, and then reading reverse ritual, that's where I made those connections, and Hazel's images and everything were what I was receiving already. It's just amazing how all of this comes from the dream state into a consciousness when you wake up to it. All of us tonight helped me to wake up to it. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
You are very awake, my dear. but enjoy resting too. That's important.
Yeah.
I have to say thank you for sharing that because I'm like, oh, that's why my meditation was the way it was.
Yes, really. It's just amazing. I've been having those revelations all day ever since in the morning I read Reverse Ritual, and before that I had my period of spiritual activity. So everything just came together and fell together. It was great. Thank you. I'm going to say good night.
Good night. Peace, sweet dreams. See you in the night school.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Good night.
Peace. Good night.
Yes.
Good
Thanks, Luigi.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Peace.
Ciao, Luigi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Geoff.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.